Hey, good evening, ladies and gentle drunks. My name is Kevin Olson. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Very glad to be here. I'm certainly glad I'm here. I'm glad that you guys are here. And I would like to welcome you all to the fourth dimension. Big book study, that is. I want to welcome everyone who's new and anyone who's coming for their first time, and want to welcome all the folks who come regularly every Tuesday and have this as a regular part of their spiritual journey and their weekly disciplines. It means the world to me to see you guys every week, and I love you lots, man. I never feel more alive. I never feel more alive than when I am sharing the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous and the miracle of God's recovery that we access through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous that I discovered in a book called Alcoholics Anonymous. And so let's share that book together tonight, shall we? As always, we will begin with the set-aside prayer. It goes a little something like this. Sing along if you know the words. God, please help me to set aside everything I think I know about you, about me, about my fellow man, and about the 12 steps. And please allow me to gain a fresh new vision, perspective, and understanding of what you, what me, what my fellow man, and the 12 steps are all about. Amen. All right, and as this is the fourth dimension big book study, I always like to read the two parts of our book that refer to the fourth dimension. So first of all, on page 8, Bill Wilson writes that I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness, and a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. And then on page 25, Bill Wilson writes that we have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence, of which we had not even dreamed. All right, brothers and sisters, we're going to be catapulted. We're going to be rocketed. And for the sake of the tradition and the custom of the fourth dimension big book study, everyone who will, please put one hand up like this. And everybody, please put another hand up like this. And everybody go, oh, yeah. All right, ladies and gentle drunks, we absolutely insist on enjoying life. We are not a glum lot, and I'm going to have fun tonight. I hope you guys will have fun tonight. I did not always have fun in my life. My life was not always a lot of fun, man. I'm here today. I want to tell you guys, I'm happy that I'm alive today. And that was not always the case in my life. I was often not happy that I was living, and I came very close to making that change myself several times in my life. And today, I'm sober and I'm happy to be alive here with you all, and I'm enjoying life today, and it's a beautiful thing. And I don't know any other way to live this way of life other than through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm thrilled to be here and to share that with you guys, and to go through some of the most important things that I've ever learned, not just in Alcoholics Anonymous, but some of the most important things that I ever learned in my life. I had no idea how to live when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I thought I was doing okay. I thought I was doing pretty well, just had a little bit of a drinking problem. Turns out I had absolutely no way of understanding. I had no understanding of how to live life on life's terms, and how to live life as a sober human being. And I'm excited. I'm excited to go through this work and show you simply what, and to teach you what I have been taught. Okay. I am a teacher of the Big Book Study, but I am also an ongoing student of the Big Book Study. Please understand that. And I learn things from our book all the time. And anyone here ever had the experience of, like, you're reading through the book and you're like, man, when did that? There's a brand new line in there. That line in our book, that line was not there a month ago when I read this chapter. Anyone ever had that experience before? And you think somehow, New York and GSO are like slipping lines into the big book without telling you? Okay. And of course, that's not the case. The reality is what changes is me. I change and I evolve. And what I need from the book and where I'm at spiritually changes and evolves. And new pieces of the book start to jump out to me all the time. And, I believe that this book is divinely inspired, and I believe that this book is like a living thing in a lot of ways, man. It continues to change and evolve with me as my life begins to change and evolve. And the nice thing is, there's no finish line in the spiritual way of life, man. Okay, there's no finish line. It continues to grow, it continues to evolve, it continues to change, and so do I. Anyway, I'm just very excited to share this with you guys tonight. So we're in step 4. And we've been talking about self a lot, selfishness and self-centeredness. Page 62, it says selfishness and self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles, okay? And in step 4, what we're really doing is looking at what Bill Wilson calls the common manifestations of self. Hey, Mitch, how are you? The common manifestations of self, okay? The common manifestations of self that we look at in a step 4 inventory in the big book, okay? And there are 3 of them, okay? And for anyone who doesn't recall, I will let you know that we look at resentments, and then we look at fears, and then we look at sex conduct, okay? And the last 2 weeks we've spent learning how to set up a step 4, learning how to set up the lines and how to make sure that we're doing a thorough job on our step 4, how to write the names, where to write the names, where to keep our step 4 for safekeeping so that no one finds it, and so on. A lot of the housekeeping, if you will, about a step 4. Okay. Then we talked about column 3. How does it affect us? And last week in particular, we talked about number 1, the prayer that we say between column 3 and column 4. Here, I'm going to share this with you guys right now. Okay, last week we talked about the prayer between page 60, between column 3 and column 4. And I missed this for years, guys. I thought 4-column inventory, 1, 2, 3, 4. My sponsor, thank God, pointed out this very important piece of information, that there is a prayer that we say in between column 3 and column 4. And essentially what it means is in Alcoholics Anonymous, we pray for the people we resent. And that's part of the spiritual toolkit that we begin to utilize to start to overcome some of these resentments, okay? And so the prayer is on page 67 and page 552. Okay, we read the prayer last week several times. Then we got into column 4, okay, and we asked ourselves, where am I to blame? Where am I to blame? Okay, and we said that there are 3 places that I look in terms of where am I to blame. I look in the past, I look in the mirror, and then I look at today. And we talked a little bit last week about trauma and how do we deal with things like abuse. If we were sexually abused as children, if there was physical abuse, if we were ever attacked as later in our lives, or so on, things that were out of our control where people harmed us. What is my part in that resentment today? Okay. So I'm just going to do a very quick review of these because I think it's one of the most important turning points in Alcoholics Anonymous for us. Okay, so when we talk about where am I to blame when I look in the past, page 62 in our book, it says selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. Okay, driven by 100 forms of fear. Here, I'm going to go right to it. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find at some time in the past we have made decisions based on self that later placed us in a position to be hurt. So when we're looking at what is my part, where am I to blame in this resentment? When we're looking in the past, okay? What decisions based on self did I make in the past that put me in this position to be hurt today? Okay. So we talked on page 65, the example of Mr. Brown. Okay. So Mr. Brown, I'm writing this out and I'm resentful at Mr. Brown. Why? His attention to my wife, He told my wife of my mistress. Brown may get my job at the office. Okay. And it's laughable once you start to see it. I can see people laughing now, but until you learn this tool, and until I learned how to look at the world differently and ask myself, what did I do in the past? In what ways was I selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, inconsiderate in the past that put me in this position to be hurt? So in terms of Mr. Brown and my resentment towards Mr. Brown, well, Mr. Brown told my wife of my mistress. Okay. He ripped me off, man. He told my wife, he ratted on me for having a mistress. Well, gosh, what decisions based on self did I make in the past that put me in this position to be hurt? See, our book says that our problems are of our own making. Okay. I live in self-will, run riot, though I usually don't think so. And when I'm living in self, I'm constantly in collision with other people. Okay. And I want to believe that I was just sitting there and other people were colliding with me without ever taking a look at what did I do to get into this collision in the first place. In terms of Mr. Brown, it's easy to see once you start to understand that I had a mistress. I was cheating on my wife. And that I had made that decision based on self that put me in this position to be hurt. In terms of this example on page 65. Okay, then it says Brown may get my job at the office. What decisions based on self did I make in the past that put me in this position to be hurt? Well, all you need to do is look down at the resentment towards the employer. My employer threatens to fire me for drinking and padding my expense account. So I'm drinking at work, and he says padding the expense account. Anywhere else in the world, that's known as theft from an employer. Okay. And now I wonder why Mr. Brown's going to get my job at the office. See, but I want to believe I'm just standing there minding my own business, and these people are hurting me with no provocation, without looking at what decisions based on self did I make that put me in this position. Okay. Then we're looking at in the mirror in terms of this resentment. Okay, and this is a very easy tool, this next one. Where am I to blame when I look in the mirror? Okay, and what that means is the very thing that I resent about the person in column 1 and number 2, why I resent them, am I guilty of, or am I capable of being guilty of the same thing? Okay, so we talked about this last week. Mr. Brown, his attention to my wife. Have I ever paid attention to someone else's wife, or am I capable of doing that? Yes. Mr. Brown told my wife of my mistress. Have I ever done something like that? Have I ever told somebody about something that they weren't supposed to know so I could get my own way? Yes. Mr. Brown may get my job at the office. Have I ever tried to play politics and play games to angle somebody out of their job in a company where I wanted their job? Sure. Am I capable of doing that? Yes. Does any of that change the situation? Does any of what I just mentioned actually change the situation that's going on with Mr. Brown? Absolutely not. Nothing changes. But what changes is the way that I look at it. And what changes is the way that I feel about it. And when I change the way I look at things, the things that I look at change. Okay? And we start to develop this new way, this new perception of looking at the world. My grand sponsor Clancy used to say, and is famous around the world for saying, that alcoholism is a disease of perception. We look at the world, but we see it terribly. I want to believe that I'm the victim. I'm the one being victimized here. Okay, these people are out and hurting me for no good reason, without ever stopping to look at, number one, how did I get here? You know, one of the joking lines that I like to use as sponsees, they come to me and they'll say like all the terrible stuff that's happening to them, and whatever. And I'll say like, oh, that's terrible. Who did this to you? Who did this to you? Okay. And what I mean by that is, what decisions based on self did I make that put me in this position to be hurt? Okay. And then looking in the mirror, okay, the very thing that I resent about this person, am I capable of, or am I guilty of, or even capable of the same thing? Okay. And then lastly, guys, speaking of the last part, where am I to blame today in this resentment? Okay. Where am I to blame today? And what I mean by that, really, and we talked about it last week, but to what extent am I using this resentment as a justification, an excuse, and a rationalization for my ongoing terrible behavior. Okay. In what way am I pouring gasoline on the fire to make things worse for myself? Okay. And every time we go through this, I'm always concerned this is going to be the time that someone's going to get really upset that I'm saying this. And they'll say, in my mind, how dare you? I'm the victim. I was abused. I was hurt. I was traumatized by this other person, and I'm right to be justified by it. I don't use this at all as an excuse. How dare you? And I will tell you, in the 16 years I've been teaching this study, it hasn't happened one time, not once. And I think we all intuitively understand that that's what we do. We'll find a reason, an excuse. Oh, what happened to me in the past? If what happened to me, you'd be drunk too. You'd be this way, man. I used to talk about abuse I suffered as a kid in the bar, especially if other people were buying me drinks. Okay, and Clancy, again, my grand sponsor, talks about, he calls it victimism. Okay. And the problem with victimism, okay, is that it is absolutely impossible for me to simultaneously be a victim without also generating resentment and self-pity. And what's the problem with resentment and self-pity for alcoholics? They're lethal. They're lethal. Okay. Raise your hand. Here's a question, guys. Raise your hand if you've ever gotten drunk at someone. Anyone here ever gotten drunk at somebody? I'm going to go out and get drunk at them, okay? That's like drinking the poison and hoping someone else is going to die, okay? And there's only one category of human beings on earth that go get drunk at people, and that's alcoholics, fueled with self-pity, fueled with resentment, okay, and using it as an excuse to go get drunk at someone else, okay? And I'll tell you that I got drunk for years behind the narrative of the trauma that I had been through as a kid, or these things that happened to me. I had a sponsee that was he wasn't traumatized as a kid. He was traumatized. He was on an all-inclusive vacation in this like third world country. It was like Costa Rica or Jamaica or Dominican Republic or one of those, something like that, okay? And he went off the tourist beach where he wasn't supposed to go, okay? And why? What do you think he was looking for, okay? What do you think he was looking for, okay? So first of all, right there, what decisions based on self did he make that put him in this position to be hurt? And he was kidnapped, and he was tortured, and it was it's a bad deal. It's a terrible deal that he went through, I admit, okay? But what he was doing, and I'm just using this as an example, what he was doing is using that as an excuse for why he was continuing to drink and continuing to use and continuing to fuck up in his life, to be frank, okay? Does that make sense to you guys? Do you see how he was using that, okay? And it wasn't until I kind of put that on him and called him out that he could see, and we have to stop doing that. I had to stop doing that for myself, living in that self-pity and that resentment about the thing that had happened, and start taking ownership of my own recovery. Okay, does that make sense, you guys? Okay, now that said, I will say in terms of trauma, that trauma is a real and legitimate thing, and it deserves to be taken care of. Okay, and that it wasn't until I was 4 years sober that I was able to finally go do real, genuine, authentic trauma therapy. Okay, and I did a great type of therapy called EMDR therapy. Okay, and I think it's called something else now. I think it's called ACT. And if you're looking for a trauma therapist, I can recommend one. Okay, I'm not saying to not do the trauma therapy. I am saying two things. I am saying that trauma therapy in and of itself is not a solution for alcoholism. And I'm also saying that I had to stop blaming my alcoholism on my trauma, get sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, get on a solid foundation of a solid home group, solid sponsor, solid commitments at my home group, solid work in the 12 steps, and most importantly, a solid relationship with God. And then, and only then, was I able to go do that very hard work of trauma therapy. Okay. But our book, page 133, says, in fact, everybody, I want everyone to go to page 133 in your book right now, because this is super important. It's super important for y'all to know, and it's super important to have this handy when we're talking to our sponsees down the road. When we're talking to our sponsees, you want to have this ready, okay? My man Brad is here. Brad, hello. Good to see you, fella. Would you be kind enough to read for us, Brad? But this does not mean.
Hey, everybody, Brad, I'm an alcoholic. But this
Hey,
does
Brad.
not mean that we disregard health measures, human health measures. God has abundantly supplied this world with fine doctors, psychologists, and practitioners of various kinds. Do not hesitate to take your health problems to such persons. Most of them give freely of themselves that their fellows may enjoy sound minds and bodies. Try to remember that though God has wrought miracles among us, we should never belittle a good doctor or psychiatrist. Their services are often indispensable in treating a newcomer and in following his case afterward.
Okay, so we never belittle. Never belittle. That's in our book, man. That's in the first 164. We never belittle a good doctor or psychiatrist. And I'll tell you, I hear a lot of belittling about the medical profession going on in Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay. And I've been guilty of it too. Okay. I'll admit that. But the reality is we never belittle a good doctor or a good psychiatrist, okay, because their services can be indispensable in helping us, particularly with things like this trauma. Here's what I want to point out. Where is that in our book? It's on page 133. What has come before that statement? All of the work that I will do in the 12 steps. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't lead with that. It doesn't say go find a psychiatrist in step 1 or step 2 or 3 or 4 or any of it. This is late in our book. It is assumed by the time we're at page 133 that I have done the rest of the work up till then. Does that make sense, you guys? They're assuming that, okay? But it is good to know that our book says, hey, man, later on, when you're done the work, once you've straightened out spiritually, then we straighten out mentally and physically and emotionally and financially and all the ways that a person can recover. But the spiritual has got to come first. The 12 steps for me in my life, and this is my own experience, the 12 steps had to come first. I kept trying to go, man, my mom is a therapist. I don't know if you guys knew that. I'm the only child of a therapist. Okay. How's that for a nightmare? Okay. I grew up sitting around the kitchen table talking therapies. Okay. I'm here to tell you, man, if therapy and learning how to talk about your emotions was a solution for alcoholism, I never would have had this problem. Okay. I had a therapist on retainer 24 hours a day from the day I was born. Okay. That was not a solution for my alcoholism. However, therapy was very helpful and instrumental afterwards down the road after I had gone through this work. Okay. You guys with me on that? Does that make sense? Thumbs up, guys. Thumbs up. Does that make sense? I want to see some thumbs. Let me see some thumbs. I want to see some thumbs. Let me see thumbs. All right. Okay. Whew. Okay. That's always a hard part to talk about. So thank you for I see Tim just gave us a thumbs up. Thank you, buddy. Good to see you, Tim. All right, we're going to move into the second part of step 4 now. Okay, we're done with resentments. We're done with resentments. We're going to move into the second common manifestation of self that we look at in step 4, and that is fear. Okay, now remember how at the beginning of the study I said that I had no idea how to live? I had no idea, and fear is a perfect example of that. Because I was convinced I had no fears. I didn't know what they meant in Alcoholics Anonymous when they talked about fear. Okay, I had no idea. And my great-grand sponsor, Chuck Chamberlain, which if you've never listened to Chuck C., don't go to bed tonight until you've listened to Chuck Chamberlain talk, okay? Chuck C. would say that it's like two little fish swimming around in the water. And one of the fish says to the other, hey, isn't the water beautiful today? And the other fish says, what's water? What's water? They had no idea what water was in which they lived and moved and had their being. They had no idea. And that was me with fear, swimming around my whole life in an ocean of terror. without ever understanding what it meant, without even understanding, being able to put my finger on it. Okay. Because when they talked about fear, I thought that they meant fear of tall buildings and fear of snakes and fear of spiders and so on. And it wasn't until somebody used two words in conjunction. They used another word, two words really in conjunction with the word fear, that I started to get an understanding of what they meant. Okay. And those two words were self-centered fear. Self-centered fear. Okay. And what I mean by that is the fear of what's going to happen to me, the fear of my future. The worst is my fear, my horrible fear of what other people are thinking about me, of whether or not other people like me, of whether or not people are going to reject me, of whether or not people are going to abandon me, of whether or not I'm going to stay healthy or get sick. Do you see how all of those fears, every fear I just mentioned, who were all those fears centered at? This guy, me. They are self-centered fears. Okay. And I always like to say that there are really only three fears that we can have. Okay. And I'm going to tell you what they are. And then I want you to see if you can distill what the common denominator of all the fears are. Okay. So, number one, I'm afraid that I'm not going to get something that I want. Okay. I really want this thing and I'm not going to get it. Number two, I'm afraid that I'm going to lose something that I have. Okay. So I have this thing and I'm going to lose it. Someone's going to take it away. Or third, I'm afraid that I've done something I shouldn't have done and I'm going to get caught. I'm going to get exposed for the thing that I've done. Okay. And I guarantee you, I'm on this call. Some people right now are like, oh, yeah, I know that one. Okay. I guarantee it. Yeah. Okay. I know. The fear of exposure, man, that I'm going to get caught. Okay. Yeah, I get it. Now, those three fears that I just mentioned, can you all see what is the common denominator in all three of those fears? What's the same thing, the same thread that runs through all three of those fears that I just mentioned? One word. I. I'm afraid that I'm not going to get what I want. I'm afraid that I'm going to lose something I have. I'm afraid that I'm going to get caught for the thing that I did. Okay. I'm rarely ever afraid of what's going to happen to other people. Okay. When I'm afraid of what's going to happen to moi. Okay. And that's why we talk about these self-centered fears. Bill Wilson says that self-centered fear is the chief activator of our defects. Okay. Fear rooted in self is what causes me to go out into the world and run into collision with everyone. Okay. So when we're talking about these fears, that's the type of fear that we're talking about. When we get into step 4, and when we start doing our fear inventory, we're going to be talking about these self-centered fears. And in particular, guys, I want you to know, like, the fear of what other people think of me is a fear that I struggle with every day. Every day. Okay. I would love to tell you that I've experienced some big freedom from, like, I don't give a crap what other people think. Okay. There's only one type of person in the world who says, I don't give a crap what other people think. And those are people who care deeply what other people think. Okay. That's the absolute truth, man. Okay. My drug of choice is what you think of me. That's my number one drug of choice, what other people think of me. Okay. And the problem is my well-being depends upon what I think you think of me, which, by the way, is not necessarily what you actually think of me. It's what I think you think of me, which is even crazier. Okay. And so how do we start to get some freedom from these things? We're going to talk about that tonight. Okay. So guys, let's go to, let's go to page 67. Okay. And as always, if you're there, you've got your pen. I suggest you go and write in the brackets there where it says, notice the word quoting fear. Okay. Write step 4, fear inventory, or just step 4, fear, so that you know where it begins. When you are sitting down with your own sponsee one day in the not too distant future, you will know exactly where fear begins in the big book. Okay. So just to recap, the 3 common manifestations of self that we look at in a step 4 inventory in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous are resentments, which we finished over the last 2 weeks and a little bit today. We're done resentments. Now, the second part, the second common manifestation of self is fear. We're going to look at resentment. We're going to look at fear. And then next week, we will look at sex conduct, and we will get into step 5 next week. Tonight, we're talking about fear. And where does that start in the big book? Right there, page 67. Notice that the word fear. Okay. Brad, over to you, brother. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Notice that the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and the wife. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. But did not we ourselves set the ball rolling? Sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble.
Okay, so when it says there that fear is bracketed alongside the resentments to Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, what they're really saying there and what is accurate is that a lot of times when I'm looking at my resentments in the first part of step 4 inventory, when I'm looking at resentments, if I look at it the right way, I will also see that there are fears associated to those resentments. Okay. So for example, Mr. Brown told my wife if my Mrs. Brown may get my job at the office. There's fear related to all that. What's the fear? I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. I'm afraid I'm going to lose my wife. Okay. Mrs. Jones, she's telling me he's not committed her husband for drinking. He's my friend. She's a gossip. I'm afraid of what Mrs. Jones thinks of me. I'm afraid that she's destroying my reputation with other people when she's gossiping. Did you guys see how there's fears that come out of those resentments? Okay. So that's what they mean there when they say that, when they mention that fear is bracketed alongside these difficulties. Okay, Brad, back to you.
We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. We asked ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-reliance, but it didn't fully solve the fear, or sorry, had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse.
Okay, so you may not know this, but we actually just read the first 3 columns of a fear inventory, quite simply. Number 1, we put them on paper, even though we had no resentment and connection to them. Okay. So number 1, what is the fear? What am I afraid of? Okay. Then number 2, we ask ourselves why we were afraid. Okay. And there's no real right or wrong way to do this other than just to make sure that I'm being honest and thorough with why I'm being afraid. Okay. But please don't obsess about it or stress about it or overthink it. The thing to do is just to write honestly and to get it down on paper. Because a lot of what we're going to do is going to make more sense once we sit down to do our step 5 and talk about this stuff with our sponsor. Okay. So then it asks the question. We asked ourselves why we had them. Why do we have these fears? Okay. And then it says, wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. So column 3, and you guys can see my screen right now. You can see the whiteboard there. Okay. How has self-reliance failed me? Okay, well, what do I mean by that? Well, the first thing that I need to understand is that if I'm living a life on self-reliance, not only am I in trouble and am I in collision with the rest of the world, but Kevin on his own, without the power of God, without Alcoholics Anonymous, without my home group, primary purpose group, without my sponsor, without my sponsees, where am I? I am drunk, on drugs, in jail, in institutions, and dead. That's where I am on self-reliance, okay? So what I do and what I have been taught to do and what I teach my sponsees to do is to look at column 3 and ask myself, how would Kevin, relying on self, which is to say the worst possible version of me, drunk, on drugs, filled with selfishness and self-centeredness and dishonesty, filled with fear, filled with inconsideration, filled with anger, how would that version of Kevin relate to the fear that we have? Okay. So for example, let's say I had a fear of rejection. Okay. And actually on that note, I'm gonna share something else with you guys in terms of column 1. I think you'll find this, I know I found this helpful, okay? Just as with resentments, we had the resentment inventory prompt. You can find the same thing if you just Google fear inventory prompt sheet. If you just Google those words, you can find this yourself, okay? And it gives us a list of things that we might be afraid of. So fear of God, fear of dying, fear of insecurity, fear of rejection, that's a big one. Fear of loneliness, okay? Fear of unemployment, okay? So let's just take those 3. Let's start with fear of rejection, fear of dying. Let's go fear of dying, fear of rejection, and fear of unemployment, okay? Let's see how those relate now to this fear, how self-reliance has failed me, okay? So let's say in column 1, I wrote fear of dying. Why? Well, because I don't want to die. And I'm worried that I haven't done enough in my life. And I'm worried that my life won't mean anything and that I'm a failure and so on and so forth, okay? How has self-reliance and how will self-reliance fail me in terms of this fear? Okay. Well, number 1, I'm drunk and on drugs and living an insane life again if I'm living on self-reliance. Okay. And do you think it's more likely that I'm going to die a horrible, tragic, meaningless death if I'm living based in self? Would you guys agree with that? That it's more likely that I'm going to die, I'm going to be unhealthy, and I'm going to have a tragic, terrible life. And when I die, ultimately no one is going to care and everyone will be glad that I'm gone because of the life that I lived as a drunk drug addict, destroying the lives of other people, being a tornado in the lives of other people. So we have this fear of dying, okay? How has self-reliance failed me on my own, the worst version of myself related to this fear of dying? Does that make sense, you guys? Okay. Now let's take a fear of rejection, okay? How would me being the worst version of myself, drunk, on drugs, selfish, self-centered, dishonest, filled with anger and inconsideration, result in this fear of rejection? Do you think it's safe to say, guys, that if I'm living that type of a life, I'm behaving like that type of a person, living in self-reliance, doing things Kevin's way, with little King Kevin trying to get his way, that other people are more likely to reject me or abandon me? Yes, it's not rejection. It's not abandonment, man. It's self-preservation. Okay. For their own safety, people have to get away from me when I'm living that way. Okay. And now understand, guys, we're going to get into column 4 here in a minute, and we're going to have a solution for this. Okay. There is an ultimate solution for this that Alcoholics Anonymous gives us, that God gives us. And I'm going to share it with you in a moment. Okay. But for right now, we're still living in self. We're still all problem now. Okay. So now with everything that I just mentioned, okay, I'm going to ask for a volunteer. I want to see if you guys, are starting to figure this out. If we're talking about a fear of unemployment, how would Kevin living in self, drunk on drugs, filled with resentment and dishonesty and inconsideration and all that stuff, how would me living that way relate to my fear of unemployment? Anyone want to take a guess? Anyone want to try to explain it? I'll ask. I'll ask for volunteer. I'm gonna ask Tom.
Was that Tom?
Tom, yeah, Tom.
Yeah, so basically just generally being unemployable, right? Unreliable, all those things. It's like how can I actually expect um to be employed, right? To actually be a good employee, as opposed to, like what can I give to this as opposed to what can I get from it? And then when people see like, just what I'm putting out, even my resume or whatever, right? It's like I feel judged, I feel less than, and yeah, like I feel like the world's against me, right? And it's like, why is all this happening to me? So
100%, man. Exactly right. Guys, give Tom a round of applause for volunteering, man. That takes courage. It takes guts. Exactly right, Tom. Okay. Kevin, living in self-reliance, I am unemployable. In fact, I haven't really heard the word unemployable anywhere other than in Alcoholics Anonymous. Like I work out there in the world with like the normies, the earth people. I work out there all the time. I don't hear about unemployable a lot. I hear a lot about unemployable. I was unemployable myself, absolutely unemployable. I lost a job that I was working at where I worked literally across the street from where I worked. I mean, literally, the job was across the street from where I worked, and I lost that job due to absenteeism. Okay, because I just wasn't there. I wasn't capable of being there because I was living in self. I was a drunk, drug addicted, sick, selfish, dishonest, disloyal, inconsiderate human being. And me living that way, living in that type of self reliance, will always be related to any fear I might have. Okay. And by the end of tonight, we can go through a couple of your own examples. Okay. But for now, I'm going to work through just two in particular. One, fear of rejection, the fear of being unemployable. Okay. Those two we're going to go through tonight in detail in terms of the solution. So I want to share something else with you related to this fear of how has self-reliance failed me. Okay. And one of the things that alcoholics deal with a lot is that we come to AA with these lives of chaos and these lives of pain and these lives of suffering in our own lives and the lives of others that we've hurt, this trail of wreckage that we bring to AA. Okay. And a lot of that is on our minds a lot of the time. And one of the things that my mind will do if I'm not living in the present moment is that I will take my past and I will project it into the future. And I will start to believe that what used to be will always be this way. And that what I have done is who I will always be. And unfortunately, the rest of the world believes, the best predictor of past behavior or future behavior is past behavior, right? Here's what they don't know. They don't know about the transformational, rejuvenating, recuperating, life-changing power of God in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And here in AA, living in the power of God, the Father of light who presides over us all. When I am connected to that power, I am no longer the same human being that lost that job across the street. I don't live that way anymore. As a result of the program of action in Alcoholics Anonymous, I have changed. I am a different human being. And isn't that what God is interested in? Isn't that what he wants to change our character? That's step 6. He's changing our character. Kevin used to be this character, and today Kevin is a different character. Now, trust me, Kevin can still be a character, okay? Like, I'm not saying I've got it made, but I will tell you, I am no longer relying on self. I am no longer that person that I used to be, and I have been transformed. And my life has been molded and reshaped in God's hands in this program, in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Through work and self-sacrifice for others, the program of the 12 steps, doing that work and becoming a vital member of AA, my life has changed. Okay. And so now what I want to do is talk to you guys about the solution in step 4. Okay. For fear inventory. Talk about it. So Brad, let's go back to 67 we were on. Sorry, 68. Perhaps there is a better way.
Perhaps there is a better way. We think so, for we are now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. We
So
trust.
there's 2 things there. I just want to point out, Brad, there are 2 things there. We're relying on God. That's number 1. We're trusting God. That's number 2. That's not the same thing. Relying on God and trusting God. Okay? Those are 2 different things. And we're going to talk about it when we get into the solution here. Brad, back to you.
We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. We are in the world to play the role he assigns. Just to the extent that we do as we think he would have us and humbly rely on him, does he enable us to match calamity with serenity. We never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those.
Okay, so we're going to do, sorry, Brad. Oh, sorry. I don't know if my signal's cutting out. Again, guys, 2 things there. Okay, sorry about my internet here, guys. We are going to do as God would have us. That's number 1. We are going to do as God would have us. We are going to do God's will. Number 1. Then number 2, we are going to humbly rely on him. Okay? Trusting God. And that's hard. That's not easy to do. But number 1, we are going to do as God would have us. Number 1, we're going to take action in Alcoholics Anonymous. We're going to take direction from our sponsor. We're going to be in a much better path, a much more structured path in our life. We're going to do as God would have us. And then number 2, we're going to trust God. Okay? And I'll talk about those both here in a minute. Brad, back to you.
We never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it is the way of strength. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. At once we commence to outgrow fear.
Okay, guys. So first of all, I want to say we just read the step 4 fear prayer. Okay. So just like with the resentment prayer, we have columns 1, 2, and 3. Okay. How has self-reliance failed me? Drunk, drug addicted, sick, selfish Kevin. How does that relate to this fear? And in what ways am I taking my past and projecting it into the future? Because I think that I'm always going to be this guy, which is not the case. Now, between column 3 and column 4, I'm going to say this prayer on page 68. And at the bottom of the paragraph that Brad just read, it says, we ask him. Okay? And remember, in our book, anytime it says we ask, that is a prayer. So we ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention towards what he would have us be. Okay? And I want you to make a note of that. That is the step 4 fear prayer. Okay. And I suggest you guys have that prayer in your back pocket, tattooed or tattooed on the inside of your forehead. Do not leave home without this prayer. God, please remove my fear and direct my attention towards what you would have me be. Please remove my fear of this meeting I'm about to go into, God, and direct my attention towards what you would have me be. God, please remove my fear of this dental appointment I have tomorrow and direct my attention towards what you would have me be. God, please remove my fear of what's going to happen to my parents when my dad goes in for surgery and direct my attention towards what you would have me be. God, please remove my fear of what my sponsees think of me and direct my attention towards what you would have me be. Okay. Whatever the fear is. And the real goal, and we'll talk more about this when we get into step 6 and 7. But one of the things I have to do, and I've had to learn how to do, is to pause when I'm agitated or doubtful and ask myself, what am I feeling right now? Oh, I'm afraid right now. Let me ask you this question. Anyone here ever suffer from anxiety or an anxiety disorder? Anyone ever been diagnosed by a psychiatrist with an anxiety disorder of any kind? Okay. Earth people, the normies, we talk about fear. Something. That's what, that's what they'll talk about. We talk about fear in AA, okay? So this fear, God, please remove my fear. And I have to be able to identify what it is and then direct my attention towards what you would have me be. What would God have us be? 2 words. Love, service. Love and service, baby. God would have us be of love and service, okay? And in particular, I personally think the antidote to fear is learning how to be of service to others. When I am thinking about you, I am not thinking about myself. When I am thinking about your suffering, I'm not obsessed with my own suffering. Okay. And given that fear is rooted in self-centeredness, if I can stop thinking about myself for a moment and instead thinking about you, the fear disappears. Okay. Emmett Fox talks about the golden key. The golden key in prayer, the golden key is simply this. If I have a problem or a fear, whatever the fear is, whatever the problem is with it, whatever the difficulty is, if I will stop thinking about the fear and instead think about God, the fear will be removed. It will just disappear. Okay. And in that same way, I think when I start thinking about others, when I start thinking about how can I be of love and service to others, how can I be of help? How can I be of usefulness to someone else? When I'm thinking about you, I'm not thinking about me and I'm not obsessed with my own fears. The most dangerous place in the world for a guy like me, you know where it is? It's not in a bar. It's not out anywhere else in the world. It's me sitting at home alone thinking. It's the most dangerous place in the world for me. Thinking usually about how I'm feeling. Okay. And how I'm thinking is impacting the way that I'm feeling, and how I'm feeling is impacting the way that I'm thinking, and on and on and on and on and on until I just drive myself absolutely around a twist and go drink. Okay. And the key here, God, please remove my fear of whatever it is and go direct my attention towards what you would have me be. Now let's get into column 4. Column 4 in a fear inventory, brothers and sisters. I break it down into two levels, the surface level and the deeper promise. You'll see here what I just wrote down, the surface level and the deeper promise, okay? And what we're really looking at here, guys, is how would trusting God and doing his will remove the fear, okay? At a surface level, if I am doing God's will, I am probably living an upright, forthright, structured life of honesty and service. And I don't have to be afraid of the things that I used to be afraid of because I'm living a different way of life. Okay. But then you'll see here the deeper promise through trusting God is that God forbid. And I always start these guys with the words, even if this thing happens, I know that my well-being is not dependent on that thing. My well-being is dependent upon my relationship with God and the actions that I take in Alcoholics Anonymous. And even if these things happen, I will be okay. And we can trust that that's real and that that's going to happen, okay? One of the things, guys, in terms of this doing God's will, the surface level of doing God's will, I want you to imagine for a minute. I don't have a whiteboard to do this on, but I want you to imagine, anyone listening to this. I want you just to imagine on a big whiteboard, I'm writing out a big circle, big giant circle. And in that big circle, I'm writing the words God's will in the big circle. Okay. And then inside that big circle, I'm going to draw a little tiny circle. And that little tiny circle with an arrow pointing to it. And I'm going to write Kevin's will. Okay. Kevin's will is the little circle inside the big circle that is God's will. Okay. And it's the same for everyone on this call. Little circle, your will, inside the bigger circle, God's will. From now on, for the rest of your life, sobriety and Alcoholics Anonymous and everything else you have going on, the only thing that matters for me, for you, for all of us, is that I keep that little circle, Kevin's will, inside the big circle, God's will. If I keep the little circle inside the big circle, then I have nothing to be afraid of. Nothing. It does not matter if I take the job, don't take the job, buy the house, don't buy the house, marry the woman, don't marry the woman. It does not matter. None of it. It's all going to be well if I keep that little circle inside the big circle. On the other hand, as I have found out the hard way in my life, if I let that little circle get outside the big circle, then it does not matter if I take the job, don't take the job, marry the girl, don't marry the woman, buy the house, don't buy the house. It does not matter. Everything is going to be a horrible disaster. Disaster. And a lot of AA old timers have the scars to prove it. Okay. We may have stayed sober, but we let that little circle get outside the big circle and caused horrible messes. Any old timers here? Anyone over 5 years sober can attest to the same. Okay. That all that matters, the most important thing is keeping the little circle inside the big circle. Okay. And if I do that, I have nothing to fear. That's the first column, the surface level, doing God's will. So let's talk about rejection, fear of rejection. Okay. Column 1, fear of rejection. Why? I don't like being rejected. I worry about other people think it hurts and so on and so forth. How has self-reliance failed me? Well, when I'm drunk and I'm on drugs and causing pain to other people, they tend to reject me. Okay, now the prayer. God, please remove my fear of rejection and direct my attention towards what you would have me be. What would God have us be? Love and service. Okay, so now, if I'm doing God's will on the surface level, how would doing God's will remove the fear? If I am doing God's will on the surface, okay, then I am trying to see how I can help other people, trying to see how I can be honest, trying to see how I can be a man of integrity, a good person, trying to see how I can help others. Is it safe to say that if I'm living that way of life, I'm less likely to be rejected by other people than as opposed to when I was drinking? Yes, for sure. So keeping the little circle inside the big circle, I'm less likely to be rejected, right? Yes, but that's not even the cool part. The cool part is the deeper promise, even if I am rejected by human beings, my well-being does not depend upon the opinions of other human beings anymore. My well-being depends upon my relationship with God and how I can be of love and service to other people and the actions that I take in Alcoholics Anonymous. Even if other people reject me, I know that I can be okay and I will be okay. And other human beings' opinion of me does not have the same power that it once did. I'll admit it still does have some power, and I do struggle with it. Okay. And when I do struggle with it, what do I need to do? God, please remove my fear of what people think of me and direct my attention towards how I can go help other people. And I start thinking about them and I stop thinking about myself. Let's talk about a fear of unemployment. Column 1, fear of unemployment. Column 2, why? Well, because I've lost jobs in the past, and it was really bad, and I'm worried about what will happen to money, and so on and so forth. How has self-reliance failed me? When I'm drunk and on drugs, I'm unemployable. Great. Prayer, page 68. God, please remove my fear of unemployment, direct my attention towards what you're going to have me be. Now, surface level, doing God's will. Is it safe to say, guys, that if I am sane, safe, sober, not drinking, not stealing, not being dishonest, showing up on time, trying to be a good guy, trying to give people a dollar for every dime they pay me, that probably I'm not going to be unemployable anymore. I'm keeping that little circle inside the big circle, and probably I'm going to start doing better in my career. Would you guys agree with that? Just at a high level, conceptually, would you guys agree with that? Yes. Then the deeper promise, though, even if trusting God, and it's not easy to trust God, but even if I were to lose my job, I can know and trust that my real employer, who is God, is my real employer, is the real source of my wealth and the real source of my abundance, has a different plan for me. And I can trust that and keep keeping that little circle inside the big circle and keep trusting God and keep showing up to my home group and keep working with my sponsees and keep coming to the Tuesday night big book study and keep doing all the things that I need to do. I can trust truly that I will keep doing my work, that I work for God, and God is going to keep paying me in abundance. Okay. And that even if I become unemployable or I lose my job, that I'll be okay, and that there is a plan and that there is a new way of life for me. Okay. Okay, you guys, that's it. That's fear. That's fear. We'll be back next week and we'll talk about sex conduct, and then we'll get into step 5. So with that said, you guys, we'll end for tonight. Now, please don't run away. We're going to say the Lord's Prayer. And then my favorite part of the week, what I love today, we're going to go around the circle. Everyone will say hello, and we'll have a chance. Just introduce yourself with your first name and where you're from. I'd love to say hi to everyone. So let's end for tonight, and we'll say the Lord's Prayer.